The next major clashes between the police and the protesters took place on February 1820. And during those days, close to 100 demonstrators were killed, as well as dozens of police officers. And after signing the agreement with the opposition on February 21st, Yanukovych fled Kiev and went to Donetsk, then Crimea, and then to Russia. Ola, I don't think that many people saw the regime collapsing so quickly when in the previous 2 days it displayed such a destructive power. How do you account for a relative sudden downfall of the Yanukovych regime?
Yeah, I really would not say that the downfall of the regime was in fact so sudden. I think it's after seeing the protests go on for what ended up being months, we were probably, we lost maybe hope for those of us who wanted to see Yanukovych leave. For those of us who didn't, maybe we were happy. But really I don't think it was sudden. It was months of this slow, momentary divisions and schisms and conflicts from within the Yanukovych coalition of networks. Now, I think what was responsible for what happened in those final days in February was the diffusion of the protests to the center, east, and south of the country. And this happened throughout January, but then it, of course, intensified in February again. And I think that is what destabilized the coalition of political and financial backers behind Yanukovych. People that maybe weren't part of the close inner circle, but that have supported him throughout his long political career. I think what we saw only what was visible at the surface, but through a variety of interviews from insiders, we know that there was an ongoing disagreement within the Party of Regions about how to deal with the protests. Prior to the protests, how to deal with the association agreements. And prior to that, generally how to govern. As far as I had an insider that was reporting to me from within, he was working as an insider, as a part of the administration as an assistant. And there were people telling me about constant conflicts and schisms within this coalition. So I think what happened when the protests were diffused to different regions is that there was more pressure put on this inner circle and on Yanukovych specifically. And it came from important people that perhaps up until that point he didn't think he could, he thought he could count on, absolutely, but he didn't think he would lose their support. And I think that this the result of these defections, both the ones that we saw very publicly, but also there were private defections, and the consistent pressure from within these individuals was what actually led to Yanukovych fleeing.
Ola, you focus on the domestic factors. Olena, how about those international factors? How do they play? What kind of role do they play in the downfall of Yanukovych regime? We remember that there were EU ministers negotiating or facilitating the negotiation of the agreement between opposition and Yanukovych on February 20th and 21st, before Yanukovych fled Kiev. So how do you assess the role of international kind of factors here?
Well, there are two opinions about role of Western ministers in those negotiations. The first opinion is that the deal that they made was fine, because essentially this deal stated that Yanukovych presidency will end within a year, and it showed that Yanukovych will not remain in power forever as he planned, and this urged his major allies to defect, like the prosecutor general. And it was an important moment when such important people defected. Yanukovych simply could not stay in power, and he fled. Another opinion, which I tend to support more, is that Yanukovych was already weak at that time, and the fact that he signed this deal to remain a president for 1 more year did not make much sense, because as we know, and we knew this post factum because of the video footage from his residency, he was packing his belongings for 2 years, for 2 days before he signed this agreement. Moreover, we know that he was trying to use the army to suppress the protests, and we know that there were defections of the army generals, and essentially out of 4 battalions that he wanted to call to Kiev, only 1 battalion tried to get in, but they were blocked by the people from Dnipropetrovsk. So essentially, if we look here, Yanukovych was almost powerless at that point. And this makes a little bit unclear why Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski told the opposition who were against signing this deal. He said this famous phrase, "If you don't do that, he will introduce martial law and you will all be dead." I think my opinion is that European leaders, they overestimated the strength of Yanukovych regime by signing that deal.
By pushing that deal to, okay, on the opposition.